take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
All right, how is everyone? Can you guys hear me good? Let me know if you can, if you can't, and if you guys hear grunts in the background, that is my little one. So I hope everybody's doing really, really well. I know I have not been on, so what I'm going to do is this stream, I do have a couple of true crime cases that I've been looking at that I wanted us to dive into, but I have kind of had to, or was choosing to kind of take a little breather because this whole situation that's been things that have been transpiring surrounding what happened in Israel. I've kind of gone back and forth with myself on addressing or not addressing. And, you know, I kind of just came to the conclusion that I would address it. And, you know, I assume that mass murder falls under the genre of true crime. So what I want to do tonight, and before we even really get started, I want to address for moderators, what we're going to do is do a stream on this, and then if you guys want to have like a chat stream, we will. But mine's for this particular topic, and I could be completely wrong, but I do suspect because of the heightened emotions surrounding this situation that we could have some people that just based off of the thumbnail, good to see you too, Greg, may come in simply to troll or say like obscene things in regards to the people that were targeted and killed in this latest attack on Israel. And if that is the case, I don't know what you guys see on the other side of your screen. I mod for some other channels, but I've never had to block or like ban anyone. But let me be extremely clear. We will welcome respectfully opposing opinions. However, if people are rude, vile, or trolling, or they are saying vile things in regards to the victims, you guys let me know what it allows you to do on your end, but I don't want them timed out. I want them banned or blocked. They're just not welcome here. So one of the things I really felt that needed to be addressed is because when I went digging through this myself, because of all the controversy coming of it, and I was kind of in disbelief at the level of support because of the brutality of this particular attack. So most people are aware that, Israel and Gaza, or, the Palestinians have been back and forth at war. Oh, Renee, you're at home tonight. That is wonderful. Well, I'm so glad you get to, you're choosing to spend your night off over here with me. So that Israel and the Palestinians have kind of been at war for quite a while, back and forth, far before you or I. So I actually wanted to look at this and really dive into the history of it. And I did about 8 or 9 hours worth of hyperfixation on this. And I went further back, but I approximated the first historical relevance, that's documented, to be around 1400, 1300 BC. So that is where we're going to be starting tonight. And if you guys will, if you have not already, if you'll please just hit that like button. If you have not and you enjoy the stream, please subscribe. And sorry guys, I'm trying to log in to pull some things up. So how many of you, I would assume most of you, pretty much everybody, is familiar with what took place last week in regards to the Hamas attack on Israel? And I want to be extremely clear, the Hamas attack on Israeli civilians, because that is what makes this different. I know that a lot of people are stating, this is war, and it was an attack. No, this was different than anything I have ever seen in my lifetime. And Renee says, Renee is asking for a prayer for her client. Hospice has been called in. If you guys would please, whether it's prayers, vibes, thoughts, whatever, if you will send those not only to her client, but also Renee, because I know when you're a caregiver to lose someone, it's hard. It's like if you're a good caregiver, it's like losing family. And I know that you are, Renee. So what makes this different, and that I do feel some frustration because I feel like people are overlooking, is this was not a military attack. There are civilian casualties in war and in military battles and attacks, and it's always sad. It doesn't matter what side you're on. It is sad that civilian casualties happen in warfare. However, this is not what that was. This was, by all accounts, if you go and look up the definition of terrorism, this was, by all accounts, a terrorist attack. Now, other countries I can't speak for them, but several years ago, the U.S. and I believe the UN um, did label Hamas as a terrorist organization or a terrorist group. And I do think it's fitting, but regardless of what you feel they are, when you go in and specifically target civilians, not military, not just the country itself, you go into brutally torture and kill civilians, that is terrorism. So, I'm going to do a run through. I want to keep this live under about an hour. I completely agree, Renee, 100%. And I just want to give some background because I went and I did a ton of research into this because I wanted to know, is there any merit in where people are standing? And I don't think that it does not matter in regards to, I mean, technically, you could argue it does. But when it comes to the support of grape, raping women, and beheading babies, killing children, taking civilians out of their homes, attacking young people who are simply at a festival, actually, probably a very peaceful group of young people at a festival that are just there to enjoy the music. Any support of that type of method is completely disgusting. There's a reason that we don't see this occurring typically in war, where one group invades another, but targets civilians specifically. And then furthermore, generally when there are civilian casualties in war, it is very, very rare that you see members of military taunting the civilians that they're going to kill. So I do understand that some people feel this was a case where the people of Gaza felt that they had to really, really be bold and make a statement or send a message because, they're arguing that these people are freedom fighters or, that they had no choice but to be bold. Well, let me explain something. Taking hostages, Israel values their civilians and their people very, very much. So much so that they released over 1,000 hostages or prisoners of war that they had for single-digit number exchange for their people a couple of years ago. So, you can't really argue that. Now, so if some people, I've seen them argue that, they had to go in and they had to take hostages and things like that. You do not have to SA people in order to take hostages. You do not have to SA people in order to unalive them, to kill them. You don't have to rip up and destroy homes in order to go in and kill someone and make a statement, if that's what's being argued. There are just so many things that were done that absolutely, unequivocally did not have to be done, and it was terrorism, and it was torture, and it was uncalled for, and it's unacceptable. But because there is this huge thing right now of people saying, in mass support of Hamas, and people saying, well, it's this or it's that, or it's stolen land. We're going to review the history. So we're going to start at approximately 1400 1300 BCE, and this is where I found the first documented Jewish history that begins. So it was approximately this time that Moses leaves Egypt, and in the midst of migrating or leaving there, that is where we run into what will later be known as Israel. And then in 1000 BCE, the kingdom of David is established, and the first temple of Solomon is built in Jerusalem. And that is when we've really see Israel be recognized, because Jerusalem is the capital. He acknowledges that and makes Jerusalem the capital. So it was actually 957, let me be 100% precise, that the first temple of Solomon is built in Jerusalem. Then in 722 BCE, the first Jewish exile took place, and that was the Assyrian exile. And then, so here's the thing. We are now at 722 BCE, right? And it is a Jewish exile that has begun. So that should tell you the people that were residing in that land, right? Because you wouldn't exile a population of people that were not even relevant or residing in that land, okay? So I'm going to leave that there. Then we're going to go to around 586 BCE. We see the Babylonian exile, and where they come in, they conquer the land, and they do destroy the first temple that was previously there. And around 515 BCE, we see the Great Return, which are what they refer to as the Great Return, which is where the Jews returned to the land, and they build the second temple. Somewhere approximately 63 BCE, the Roman Empire comes in. They take over Judea, is I believe how it's pronounced. If I slaughter any of these, please let me know. And for anyone who this holds, relevance, cultural relevance and things like that for them, please understand that if I slaughter any of the pronunciation for these areas, that I do not mean it out of disrespect. But it was, I was not aware, but it was actually Pompey who led this battle or ongoing battle for the land. And it does, so Judea becomes a vassal state of the Roman Empire at this point. They are victorious. However, during this time, I will say, we know that the Roman Empire was a force to be reckoned with, and they did put up a pretty good fight, and we'll see that reoccur or it occurred during that time. Like the Jews had, so around 70 CE, the Jews revolted against Roman leadership, and Jerusalem was destroyed during this time, as well as the second temple. So 130 to 136 CE, we see the Bar Kokhba revolts by Jews, and this caused a massive effort. This time the tables kind of turned, and this, while the Roman Empire did prevail, they had to seriously fight this one. They had to extend a massive amount of resources, and because of that, because of the anger and frustration that they experienced because of this revolt, they would rename the land Syria-Palestina. I believe. But if not, it was Syria-Palestine. I've seen it referenced as both. I don't know if it is just the pronunciation difference between cultures. But Syria-Palestina is, I believe, how it was initially done. And they did this as an insult to the Jews. It was not because they were putting Palestinian people there. They did this, they specifically chose that name. Obviously, Syria had relevance at this time, but they did it as an insult to the Jews due to their historical enemy being the Philistines. Okay? And by all means, I encourage you guys, if I didn't say it already, to do your own research as always. These dates, this is really, really, really far back in history. So I cross-reference different sources. And so some of these dates are approximate, but we can't rewrite history to fit our narrative. And ignorance is not bliss in situations such as these. And if people are not, I get really frustrated sometimes because I feel like as a society, and my generation, let me be extremely clear, I think my generation was the start of this. We have more readily available access to knowledge at our fingertips, and I think we use it less and less with every generation. And before you sign your name to something, or before you say, I'm fully in favor or fully in support of something, much like I did, before I form an opinion, I want to look at the facts. And I don't want to be persuaded. I don't want distorted facts. I want to look at the history. And so I'm not asking anyone to take a side. Let me also state that I do not support or incite hate. Please be kind to everybody, regardless of their culture. And that's not what this is. This is simply, I like to think that there are a lot of people that are signing their name to something that perhaps they haven't done the research for. Why should thou fear the beautiful angel of death who waits at the portals of the skies, ready to kiss away struggling breath, ready with gentle hand to thine close bound eyes? Hi, Coda. Welcome in. How are you? Thank you for joining us. So this revolt takes place by the Jews, and obviously the Romans conquer. However, again, they renamed the land Syria-Palestine or Palestina. I've seen it quoted both ways, as an insult to the Jews, with their historic enemy being the Philistines. At approximately 136 CE, the Jews leave Israel, and at this point, it is still being ran by the Roman Empire. Now, 636 CE is when we see the Arabs take over, and that is when it becomes, or when Syria-Palestine becomes what is known more commonly today as Palestine. And then from about 1099 to 1291 CE, we see crusaders that decide to take back the land, and they fight to take rule. And it's at approximately 1291 CE that the crusaders are defeated, and a Muslim group of Mamluk, I believe it's pronounced, and again, I mean no disrespect to anyone who is Muslim or of any other culture by mispronouncing these things, but they do come in and they take over. And then we will see in 1517 CE, the Ottoman Empire takes over, and they bar Jewish people from purchasing land. The Jews do make, or it's believed that the Jews were making kind of secret deals with Arabs to buy their land individually from them, kind of, I guess, like off the books types of things. They would buy the individual property. And that is where we start to see the Jews, their return to the land, when they start kind of making those private deals behind closed doors. So we're going to jump ahead to 1882. And that is when we see the first, and let me make sure I've spelled this 100% correctly, because again, I know this is a cultural thing, and I do not want to insult anyone. And okay. So the first, yeah, I'm gonna put it in the chat, okay? So this is so up my alley. I've recently become obsessed with scripture, religion, and poetry. Well, Coda, if you would like to come up and help me pronounce, or if you would correct me if I mispronunciate any of these words, which I do expect to, you are more than welcome to correct me. I welcome it. But I'm glad. And again, if any of the dates you see maybe don't line up, let me know, because I'd be more than glad to double check them. I do welcome constructive criticism by all means. So for the first time, we see an influx of immigrants into the land of Israel during this time, and it's considered the first. But, obviously we've seen people come in and take over prior to this. And this takes place between 1882, and I think it goes on until about 1903. And it was the first large wave of immigrants that were motivated by nationalism. So during these years, it was approximately 25,000 Jews that immigrated from Russia and Romania, and about 2,500 arrived from Yemen. So we will continue further into 1897. The idea for an independent Jewish state arises around this time. So obviously we are going into like World War II time. We are seeing a Zionist movement that had began in Israel, and it was followed by anti-Semitism events and uproars. So Britain had I guess, mandate over the area. So that's where kind of you're going to see the next little bit that I cover. We're going to mention Britain quite a bit. And I know people are going to be like, well, where did the British come into this? But actually, Britain had quite a big hand in this. So Britain declares, in 1917, Britain declares the Balfour Declaration, which states plans for a Jewish homeland in Israel. And Israel, and what was known at this time as Transjordan, is promised to the Jews. And it is at this point, I believe, that Transjordan is converted to just Jordan or Jordan. So the Arab, around 1920, we see the Arab pogroms against the Jews in Jerusalem. And it's basically where the Arab people mass murder Jews because they are angry with the agreement that the British has, put into place, or said to put into place. They have plans of. And so they ultimately mass murder Jews because they're angry about it. And also, they were really, really angry that Jews were wanting to pray at the Western Wall because they did not agree with that. So in 1922, the British do have this mandate over quote unquote Palestine. They change the agreement and say Transjordan, which is about 70% of the land, right? Or Jordan, which is about 70% of the landmass that we're looking at this time, would be made an Arab state. And then 1929, we see an anti-Jewish riot, which are referred to as the Hebron riots. And these are massive. These are big. These are not little teeny, controlled riots. So because of that, and the Arabs still not being thrilled because there are still Jewish people in the area, British does agree to restrict land purchases to Jews in what is my opinion, an effort to appease the Arab people. So then in 1937, we see the Peel Commission, and they suggest a pardon plan to withdraw control from the British. And it is not because the British were, mismanaging or doing anything wrong. It is simply because the British did not want a mandate over this area. From my understanding, they were quite literally like, take it. They were likely extremely frustrated at this point. Nobody, you imagine it being kind of like, I mean, obviously it had more relevance, but kind of like babysitting. Do you really want to get the two siblings that are like, punching each other in the face constantly, or, the kids that you have to cook like 10 meals because they're not happy with what you're providing. So anyway, and it would withdraw control from the British of multiple areas of land, one of those being Jerusalem. Now, I do want to just kind of make note here. During this time, the Jews were fleeing certain areas due to the amount of anti-Semitism. Other reasons as well, but primarily anti-Semitism from what I could find. And they start returning to what would become known as Palestine. Their knowledge and resources that they brought with them, it causes a major positive economic increase in the area. And because of that, just kind of, I guess, like naturally, obviously people want to migrate or move to areas that are thriving. I don't see many people say, oh, these people are going through a depression, I definitely want to move to that area. So because of that, we see Arab people start to move into that area at a high rate because economically it is flourishing. I mean, they really help the economic value of that area. So in 1939, the Arabs, it seems to me that the Arab people began to push the Britons for restrictions on Jewish immigration. And again, the British people agree to, I guess they were kind of maybe trying to just mediate and meet in the middle. So what they agree to is putting a mandate of only 75,000 Jews allowed to migrate into the area per year. So one of the things that I've seen historically, it seems like the British, and I'd actually go further and say the Jews as well, seem to kind of conform and just want to appease, possibly for, probably for peace. The Arab people, that is my personal opinion, but it is after I have thoroughly researched the topic and then some. So, anyway, we're going to go into again 1939, where we still are, and the Arab people are dissatisfied with Britain's restriction on Jewish immigration, and so they continue and kind of amp up attacks on Jewish people. Meanwhile, the Jews are still pushing heavily to negotiate and establish a Jewish state because they really needed this. I mean, they're kind of like, we have nowhere to live, that we cannot be killed or targeted randomly. So, and to withdraw purchase restrictions on Palestine. So they're basically like, first of all, you're limiting our ability to purchase land. So we can't purchase our own land, and also we are like being targeted and killed wherever we go. So, they're like, can we stop that and cut it out? And this is right in the midst of World War II and the Holocaust. It is actively taking place. So it is quite understandable why they would want, I guess, kind of a place to take refuge. And the Jews, during World War II, the Jews sided with Britain, whereas the Palestinian leader, or Arabs, they sided with Germany, Hitler. There's photographic evidence of this. If you go back and look, you will see pictures of their leader meeting with Hitler. And I do believe during that meeting, they were making plans for Israel under the assumption that Hitler would conquer and take the Holy Land. So what I found interesting is that when it was referenced during that meeting, it appears that they were looking for a quote unquote final solution in the Holy Land. What that means wasn't specifically stated, but take it for what you will. But I do think it's important to note that we're looking at two leaders who both historically targeted Jews. So anyway, in 1947, the British this is really, I think, kind of where they put their foot down, and they're like, look, we want this mandate ended in Palestine. They do not want to be there. They want to withdraw. So the UN does a pardon plan, and it is introduced. So the plan basically states that it would retain Jerusalem to be internationally governed. So the pressure would not be left on the Brits, and they would just kind of collectively govern the area. And it would be neither Jews nor Arab land. And the Jews agree to this. And then the Arab people, they launch, in my opinion, what could be called like a small level war on the Jews. They attack Jews and their properties for about a year after this. And that was due to them disliking the suggested plan. And, this is really frustrating. And it was at this point that I kind of started to feel like this is almost like bullying, because the Jews were not included. This was something where the British wanted to pull out. They did not want a mandate in that area, or they didn't want to be over it. And then, the UN just kind of came and said, like, look, this is what we'll be willing to do. So the Jews agreed, but they got attacked because, they did not like it. And so they wouldn't agree to it. So in 1948, we see the British mandate finally does end, and Israel declares its independence. And it specifically declares its independence on May 14th of 1948. And one thing I want to note as well, because I've seen it be said all over the place, is that, Israeli people did not, they banned any Arab or Palestinian people from that area. That is, I'm just going to be honest, that cannot be the case, because current day Israel consists of 20% of all of their citizens are Arab people. So doesn't seem very likely. So Renee says, I've heard a few people think that the reason Hitler done what he did was because he blamed his mother's death on her doctor, who was Jewish. It is possible, Renee. I think I've read books, actually some of his books, into because you guys know I get hyperfixated on things, into like Aleister Crowley, and I personally think that he was the way that he was because he hated his mother, who was very, very, very religious, extremely religious, like over the top religious. So I believe that could be possible. I think that when you have a hatred inside of you that runs that deep, there's probably an underlying reason for it. And trauma would absolutely be it. Would be a good guess anyway. But I'll have to look into that because I haven't seen it before. So one thing I want to note, because I've seen that, and that is, I mean, it's undeniable. Right now, 20% of their population is Arab. Or Arab, sorry. Israel's Declaration of Independence, if you guys will go and do your research, and I encourage you to, please, like, educate yourselves. And that is not me insulting anyone, because I did not know all of this. I had to go look for it, but I was willing to do the research before forming an opinion, because I do like to think for myself. I don't like other people to tell me how to think. But one thing worth noting is that in Israel's Declaration of Independence, they do specifically invite the Arab people to stay, despite it now being a Jewish state. But instead of doing that, every Arab country surrounding Israel declared war on them. This was literally right after they declared independence. So you talk about, getting to kind of stick your toes in the water. There was no time for that. So Israel somehow, surprisingly, not only survives this, but they end up obtaining some, or gaining some territory, because they won this. Now, one thing I want to make extremely clear, which was something that I was really looking for, because, when I hear people saying, like, this is stolen land, it's stolen from the Palestinian people, and I am more than open if you can find something that I did not, but make sure it's factual and make sure it's relevant, because when I tell you I researched this for 9 hours or more, I did. There is still no existing Palestinian state now, nor historically has there ever been. So take it for what you will, but it's kind of hard to steal something from people who, from what I could find, never owned it. It never belonged to them. And here's another thing too. We have to remember that back in history, these were different times. That is what they did. It wasn't like they sat down and wrote declarations of independence and things like that. They, like the Roman Empire, they invaded a territory, they took over that territory, and whomever was, if they were victorious, it was theirs. And that's just kind of how it worked. And like, would it suck if you lived in one of those territories? Absolutely. But we know that's what they did. So in 1964, the Palestine Liberation Organization, which we're going to refer to as the PLO because I'm going to have to mention them more than once and it's a long name, is founded. Now, its goal, and this is very public knowledge, it's not hard to find, its goal was for the destruction of Israel. The leaders were not quiet about this. Like I said, I encourage you to do your own research because the name can be a little bit tricky. When I came across it initially and it said Palestine Liberation Organization, I felt like, oh, okay, so they're just looking to liberate. No, it is quite founded on the principle of the destruction of Israel. And you will see this be a reoccurring theme. So the PLO, never have I seen across all of my research calls for the Palestinians to be liberated from Jordan or Egypt, just Israel's destruction, despite the name. So 1967, we have the Arab Star War to rid basically the world of Israel. And the parties involved are Egypt, what is now Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia. Now, in 6 days, Israel was able to take Golan Heights, the Sumerian Desert, I believe the Jordan River, and more territories even, which is really, really insane when you look at the size of Israel versus its surrounding nations, because basically that's what happened. All of the surrounding areas were like, we are going to attack. So the fact that they would even survive this, much less, and I mean, don't get me wrong. It was like probably by just the hair on their skin that they prospered. But they also take what we now know to be the West Bank and Gaza Strip, which was currently under Arab control. Okay. So in 1967, the UN calls for Israel to withdraw from occupied territories. They do not specify, and apparently people feel that there's a lot of relevance in how they state occupied territories, but let me be extremely clear, that is the way it was stated. The Arab League Summit occurs and announces the policy of the 3 no's. Okay, so this is one of my biggest issues. Is I have also seen people state that Israel and Jewish people, as if Israel only consists of Jewish people, and that is not the case. Current day, that is not the case, but that they just will not negotiate. They will not. Well, I want you guys to note something that up until now they had not refused any peace deal at all. So, and we've covered a lot of history, a lot of ground. So the UN called for that. We see the Arab League Summit occurs and they announce their policy, which will be the 3 no's. no peace, no recognition, and no negotiations. Okay? I want you to note that. That is the policy that they use to govern their people. No peace, no recognition, and no negotiations. Another thing worth noting is that we have gone all the way from approximately 1300 BCE to now 1967, and to this point, Jews had accepted every peace deal ever historically offered for peace with the Arabs. And up until this point, historically, the Arab people had ignored or rejected everyone up until this point. So during, and I do not want to mispronounce it, so I'm not even going to attempt, but during what is the holiest day of the year for Jews in 1973, and actually I do want you guys to note that that is what we saw reoccur with this attack. They were attacked on their holiest day of the Jewish calendar. Okay, hold on one moment. So Coda says, I need to learn everything. I've basically been agnostic my entire life. I don't think I could pick a certain type. God's existence makes more sense the older I get, though. I pick peace and love for all. Any holy war or mistreatment because of someone's beliefs makes me sad. Absolutely. Me as well, which is why I wanted to make it extremely clear that I'm not inciting, I do not support hate against the Jews or the Palestinian people. I don't support it at all. But I do want to debunk a lot of things. And when I went and did the research, I was so incredibly it made it that much more disgusting to see people justifying victims being paraded around after they've been tortured, after they've been essayed. Again, infants having their heads removed from their bodies. And the thing is you can say, oh, well, it's propaganda. Let me be extremely clear. I have watched way more than what the news has shown yet, because what not everyone may be aware of is that on these Hamas militants, they found, the ones that they were able to kill, they found GoPros. A lot of them were quite literally filming and recording the torture and demise of these civilians, not militants, civilians. Okay. So I want to make that extremely clear. And I've looked and I've seen and I've watched these streams. I've watched CCTV footage, and there is no denying that it happened. And there is no denying that they went in there and they took hostages. No, they went in there and they essayed women and they tortured children and they killed people and they killed civilian people. And they were in many, many clips of the footage, they were laughing and enjoying it. And that is different than casualties of war. That is not casualties of war. That is animalistic behavior, and it is disgusting from any nation, any party, any nationality. Either it lacks all humanity, because I like to believe that our soldiers are not bad people for fighting for our freedom. And I can see that from the side of even opposing nations. So, we don't want our military men and women to end up being killed, but we do know that it's the price of war, because where we're going to stand our ground, they're going to stand theirs as well, right? But it is different when you're choosing to torture and kill civilians. And it's disgusting. And I've never seen it. And I've taken, which one of the things I like about homeschooling my children is that I'm able to teach history for what it is. But I'm not stating for a minute that, what we're educated on is exactly as it seems, or exactly how it played out. But what I will say is that this is history, and it can't be denied. And this is, people can try to reword it, twist it, flip it, turn it, however you want. But even if they were, they were living on stolen land that initially, from the very beginning, belonged to those people, you don't justify sexual assault. You do not justify murder, and you don't justify torture of civilians at all, period, point blank. And while I welcome all opposing opinions, if you feel that you don't like what Israel's doing over there in the Gaza Strip, I do understand 110%, and I support your right to your opinion. I just ask that you also do your research. But I will say that if you're someone who supports the attack on civilians, if you support what was done to those people, I mean, we're talking about babies ripped from pregnant women's wombs. It is not okay. It's not. And if you support that, just understand that you are setting the stage for said types of crimes of terrorism to be acceptable in your area. So that's the problem when we support things and we normalize them. And otherwise, I wouldn't be covering it here on my channel. I don't cover every war and things like that. This is different. This is criminal behavior, and it's mass murder. This was the largest mass murder of Jewish people since the Holocaust. Those GoPro videos turn my stomach, Greg. They are disgusting. They are. I mean, and I'm glad that they're there, because I think this is kind of the first time we've gotten to see something like that. But it's awful. It's really, really, really hard to watch. So after the Palestine Liberation Organization is founded in 1964, we skip ahead to 1967, and the Arabs start a war to rid kind of the world of Israel. We see that somehow, some way, Israel prevails, and they are actually able to gain a lot of territory through this. And part of that territory is what we now know as the West Bank and Gaza. Then we see, the Arab League summit. They implement the 3 no's. And we just note how negotiations have gone over history. So this is worth noting because in 1973, they were attacked on the same day, which is the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. And this does become war. It results in the extension of the border territory for Israel. Okay? Which means that Israel prevailed again, and they gained territory out of this. So in 1979, we see the Prime Minister of Israel and the leader of Egypt come to a peace agreement. In this peace accord, Israel gives them an entire desert of their land, just simply, for the most part, in exchange for peace. And this becomes known later as the Camp David Accord. It is pretty much immediately after agreeing to peace with the Prime Minister of Israel, that Egypt's leader was assassinated. So you would have to think that maybe the two are linked. And again, people are not particularly thrilled about any territory or nation being friendly with Jewish people. So in 1982, Jordan expels its Palestinian citizens, and I have never felt like it is right to group any particular peoples and, strip them of, their rights or anything like that. But Jordan completely, oh, hold on. Renee says, in my opinion, people need to wake the fuck up and read the Bible. Everything that is happening now was written about in the book of Revelation. It is there historically, and you cannot, it's hard to deny whether you're Christian or not, or, whatever, regardless of your beliefs. In my opinion, it could be argued that the Bible even predicted like the Holocaust, obviously far before it actually happened. So, Jordan, however you want to pronounce it, expels its Palestinian citizens in 1982. This was due to the fear of the PLO overtaking their monarchy. Palestinians then migrated to Lebanon as a result of being expelled. So from South Lebanon, they fire attack on Israel, and war is launched in Lebanon. Israel does occupy nearly all of Lebanon during this particular war. And after, getting some pressure from other territories, Israel does withdraw voluntarily, but they did make it all the way, I believe, to the capital. And they just withdrew. They didn't take anything from them. They just did. Greg says, I know now why the father of an 8-year-old girl was overjoyed when he was told his daughter had been executed rather than taken by Hamas to Gaza, because he knew what Hamas does to hostages. Yeah, and Greg, I saw that, and seeing that man cry, but you can only imagine what takes place truly for a grieving parent to actually say, like, I'm so incredibly grateful. I feel thankful that my 8-year-old, a child that had not even really, started life yet, was executed rather than, being taken by this group of people. But I can see why too, because I've watched the footage just like you have, and but the rest of the world isn't seeing all of that. I don't think, and I think some of it is because of blind ignorance. I think with kind of the college generation, the college age younger adults that we're seeing, and it's completely absurd to see, I'm sorry, but like young white blonde girls that live in America talk about, their people being put in such a position when she is, again, a young blonde white American that has likely never experienced any oppression or anything of the sort in her entire life. And she's speaking of another nation as if this is her people. But anyway, I digress. So they withdraw. Now, in 1987, this was immediately after Israel withdrawals, Lebanon was overtaken by terrorist groups. You will see this if you go and do the research. You will see this is a reoccurring theme. Every time that Israel is attacked and they act and invade and then they withdraw, because I really think, and I think that if you guys went and looked too, it's kind of undeniable because they just basically obtain territory and then they give it away over and over and over or offer it away over and over and over to different territories and different nations in exchange to like be able to live and not be killed and not be targeted. So they do this continuously. So it is like they have no choice but to go in and kind of defend themselves and flex. But it is like every time they withdraw from a territory, they become overtaken by terrorist organizations. So let me see. For those of us who believe in and this is Greg, let me pull you up. So for those of us who believe in the teachings of Christ and the Bible, this is the fulfillment of the prophecy, as you said, Renee. Absolutely. So Renee says the Israeli army has been asking the people in the Gaza Strip to evacuate before they come in and search for those responsible. 110%. And let me state, I have never seen that. Now, I have not ever been in the military. I've never actively engaged in war. I've never ever been boots on the ground or anything of the sort. I want to be extremely clear when I say that, but I do also want to state never in the history of war have I ever seen a people, especially after their civilians were targeted and slaughtered. Because I've never seen that before either, where a group just comes in and says, we're going to kill and torture innocent people that are inside of their homes. And let me make it extremely clear, not only were they like killing people in their homes and, dragging them out of their homes, if they did not come out of their homes, there were several occurrences, one of which, unfortunately, I had the opportunity to see a picture of what they believe. They haven't confirmed it's definitely human. It is definitely human remains, but they have not seemed to confirm child remains. It's believed and looks like child human remains, but they know it's human. But they would actually set their homes on fire because it appears that Hamas and the Palestinian groups tend to, I guess, fire rockets so often. And let me be clear, Israel, fires back. It's not like they just sit there and huddle into a corner, but they randomly launch rockets. Let me also state that what is extremely frustrating is when people are getting upset about civilian casualties, they are warning Palestinian people. They absolutely are telling the people in the Gaza Strip area, and then they're allotting sometimes anywhere from 4 to 24 hours, from what I've seen, for those people to evacuate. And I don't think most nations would do that. I think if you went into, say, Russia and specifically targeted and tortured their civilians, I think they would flatten you like a fucking parking lot. I think that the United States would likely do the same thing. And I don't think you would get any warning about it, right? So while they have declared war, while they absolutely have stated clearly that their intention and what they feel is the only solution is to basically annihilate Hamas, um, they are giving civilians an opportunity that Hamas not only did not give theirs, but actually targeted theirs. So, in 1987, after Israel withdrew, Lebanon was overtaken by terrorist groups. Palestinians from the Judea and Samaria areas launched the first intifada against Israel, and this resulted in years of violent terrorist attacks and riots. Actually, it went on from 1987 until 1991. Yeah, most Israelis had safe rooms. That's what I was getting to. Thank you, Greg, for catching me where my ADD left me at. They did. They had almost like what I would call like a panic room, but they had safe rooms. And by the pictures of some of the children that I had seen, it does look like a lot of the families actually would have their children sleep in those safe rooms. Are we leaving this up? I unfortunately got a crash for work in a few, but I want to listen to the rest. Coda, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you sleep well. And I absolutely plan to leave it up now. What YouTube chooses to do with it, because of the, I've tried to kind of use better words, but I can't sugarcoat what these people did. So if YouTube allows it, it will still be up. It'll stay up. All right. So this went on from 1987 till 1991. In 1991, our U.S. President, George H.W. Bush, pressured Israel's prime minister to negotiate peace with PLO, which I find to be extremely ironic, because let me just go back. And guys, I'm not trying to be an asshole. It's just I've looked at all of this, and the narrative that I have to believe that these people that are out there rioting and protesting in favor. No problem, Coda. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So, and let me not say rioting, these people that are protesting and parading in favor of Hamas and what took place. I have to believe that they've blindly believed a different narrative than what the history says. And I want just for anybody that's with us this far, or for anybody re-listening, by all means, if any of this is wrong, please, please, please email me. Let me know. I'm more than willing, as long as it is 100% a factual source, because I have cross-sourced all of my information. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Crusades done to save the Jewish people? So are you talking about in around like 1291, when the Crusaders were defeated? I do believe so, because they were defeated by a Muslim group. If those are the ones you're referring to. So, what happens here is the first what did I say? The first intifada, and I could be mispronouncing that, against Israel took place. That was years of violence until about 1991. Then the U.S. President George H.W. Bush, not to be confused with his son, who later becomes president, pressures Israel's prime minister to negotiate peace with PLO. This was very, very ironic because, again, when the Palestine Liberation Organization was founded, they made it very clear their goal was for the destruction of Israel. So I do think at this point how we here in the U.S. often hear, like the motto, we do not negotiate with terrorists. Our president was quite literally telling Israel's prime minister to negotiate with, in my opinion, a terrorist organization. So the leader of PLO at this current time was so violent and just honestly a horrific guy that he had actually been expelled from pretty much all of the surrounding territories. Like he personally, not the how back a little bit we talked about Jordan had expelled the Palestinian people, its Palestinian citizens. But no, he specifically had been expelled by most of the surrounding territories. So in 19 and the prime minister does agree to do so. So in 1993, following negotiation between the two, we come into what will be known as the Oslo Accords, and they are signed. This was actually because of the time gap that took place for negotiations. This was overseen by President Bill Clinton. And basically, if you guys break this down to simplify it, what it appears is that Israel quite literally, and I found this frustrating, being that I am someone who probably it's better that I wasn't involved in these negotiations, because I think that I've never seen countries negotiate like Israel does with these people. Most countries don't just say, "Hey, just like don't kill us, please." Okay, we would appreciate that. And here we're going to give you a ton of territory to not kill us. But basically, if you guys read this, the Oslo Accords were signed, and Israel was pretty much asking for acknowledgement, for them to acknowledge that they had a right to be there, to live, basically to breathe the oxygen. They were asking for them to stop the violence. Basically, don't shoot rockets at us and kill us. And also that basically no like terrorist ideals be taught to the children, like don't indoctrinate the children, pretty much is what they were saying. So pretty much they're saying we will give you land, and things of that nature. Just please acknowledge that we're humans and we deserve to live, and please don't be violent, and please don't indoctrinate the children with your violence. But PLO almost immediately broke the Oslo Accords with not only violence, but a growth in violence. So we saw the violence grow after that. So here we are. That brings us to 1998. President Bill Clinton again overseeing what would be the Y River agreements, and Israel agrees to this again, and they agree to give more territory to Palestinian authorities. And Israel makes clear that they do not want to provide over the Palestinian land. They just want to leave their citizens without being like bombed and attacked, right? So hold on one moment. So Renee says, my husband worked with Israeli special forces. His words were, I would not want them looking for me. They don't stop until they get their job accomplished. I'm going to be honest, Renee. Like I said, I did this not to do a video on it. In fact, I have been silent for probably about 9 days because it was really heavy on my mind. And having watched and seen the videos, but then seeing, people here on American soil supporting what they did. But I had to go back and do all the research because I do not know. I was very uneducated. I knew, the Israelis and the Palestinian people had been at war, but like, I just thought that was like going on forever. And I never really looked at why, or how things really started and the history of all of it. And so I had this preconceived, just like it wasn't even something that I had really thrown around. But when I went into it, I felt like because Israel is known as like the Holy Land and more peaceful people, I felt like, oh my gosh, I bet you they're like this little, and they're so tiny. They are. The land mass, if you compare it to surrounding areas, they are really, really small. But I felt like, oh, they're probably like so fragile. That is not the case. And I think that this latest attack, I think that they experienced that because they have some of the most, I would go as far to say that while we probably won't admit it, I feel like their military capabilities and their intelligence probably surpasses ours. Now, granted, ours is a lot bigger on a larger scale. We're a bigger territory. We're a bigger area, I would think. So I would think ours is bigger. But yeah, I don't think I think it shows that they're peaceful people in the fact that they are not fragile at all. They are very much capable. Their military is, if not the one of the most capable in the entire world. And they've proven that over and over and over. I mean, can you only imagine having Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, all of these areas coming at you at once, and you are this little tiny territory compared to them, right? So, yeah, there is that, but they have proven, so they have put their money where their mouth is. But I think that they have wanted peace. I really, really do. I think they are a people who wants peace. I do not think there are people who hate Palestinians or who want to see other people suffer. I really think they just want to exist, and because of that, I mean, like with Egypt, they were like, here, take a whole desert. Um, you know, so I had this preconceived idea that their military was likely weak. No, I don't think so at all. Mm. So Renee said they tracked down several of the Nazis who were to be charged with war crimes. Yeah, absolutely. I think they're more than capable. And I just think that Hamas did not think that they were going to, because I know they're not even now doing what they're capable of doing. If they wanted to, I mean, within minutes, they could have wiped the Gaza Strip out. But they haven't done that. So I just don't think Hamas thought that they actually would like declare war, because Israel has been so like willing to negotiate, if you will. So, Bill Clinton oversaw the Way River agreements in 1998. Israel agreed to give more territory to the Palestinian authorities. And, they pretty much made it clear, like, look, we don't want to have to mandate and, So anyway, that did not work out. So in 2000, Bill Clinton, again, oversees Israel entering negotiation for what then would be, I might have said the earlier one wrong. The Camp David summit between Israel and PLO, I guess, at this point. So the Prime Minister of Israel offered control over, all of the prior territory that they had offered, but they vamped it up again. And not only that territory, but they offered the temple map, which people could argue is of, religious relevance, I guess. It holds value, to a lot of value to the Israeli people. So they offer control over the temple map, Judea and Samaria, the Gaza Strip, and other areas as well. And during this negotiation, the Palestinian leader refused all of the offers and rejected an opportunity for a major Palestinian state, and does not even attempt. And that's what's extremely frustrating. You see Israel offer to give. And in my opinion, at this point, it's not even negotiating. It's just like, dude, here. And they don't even attempt a counteroffer. And their leader leaves. So then 2000, between 2005, and that's what's infuriating too. It seems like another reoccurring theme is that every time they enter negotiation and they don't come to a negotiation, or even the one time that they did, they're attacked immediately following that. It seems like it's reoccurring. So from 2000 to 2005, the then Palestinian leader launched a second intifada after refusing Israel's latest peace negotiation, which was the Camp David Accord, and killed thousands of Jews and destroyed their property and businesses. Abbas, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Abbas took over PLO in 2004 and was currently leading it at that time. And I do believe that is the one that has been publicly referenced, or more well known, because I think there's actual media footage of him like talking about how what Hitler did was so, basically he applauds what Hitler did, and he supports, I assume, the annihilation of Jews. Renee, what stood out to me on those old Nazi war criminals being tracked down is that at first they denied it, but then admitted it like a badge of honor with no remorse. In my opinion, the Israelis have more patience than I would ever have when another religion builds on top of one of the most holy places, Temple Mount, and not fight back when it shows. Right, exactly. And furthermore, they offer control. They're saying this place that has relevance to us, I mean, I feel like they were getting the idea that, okay, well, where we first thought that they just want land and territory to be their own, that is not the case. So by the time they went into negotiation, what, the third, maybe fourth time, they were like, here, let us not only give you territory, let us not only give you resources, but let's also and it's important to note too that they had also offered uh military assistance. They offered to send their own military. I think it might have been about 13,000, but I could be wrong on that number. I don't have it in my notes, but roughly somewhere in that ballpark. Troops to protect their borders if they would accept this. So not only were they like, let me help you gain territory, let me give you territory, but furthermore, we will actually send our military to help you protect that territory while get what you got to get done for this to be a Palestinian state. So again, after refusing, the Palestinian leader launched that second really large attack. After refusing Israel's latest peace negotiation, they killed thousands of Jews and destroyed their property. So in 2005, Israel withdrew from, obviously they were fighting. They were at war at this time, pretty much like another little war. Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip after removing their Jewish people, because there were Jewish settlers in that area, obviously, but they completely withdrew from the Gaza Strip after removing their Jews who had settled there, and that is when Hamas comes into play. So something that I was doing in my own head, and I've seen a lot of people state, is the separation of like Hamas from, I guess, like Palestine in general, because I kind of assumed, like how we see this, it's like as soon as they withdraw, the terrorist organizations come in and take over. No, that wasn't the case here. So let me pull up for you guys, because this was what I was like, what? Okay, let me see. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys real quick. We're going to kind of read this together. Oh, wow. So Renee said her family is from Perugia, but left before World War I started because of what they were saying. I'm so glad your family got out of there, Renee. I mean, I hate that, they probably did not intend or want to leave. So we're going to look at an article here, because what I was not aware of is that Hamas did not just come in and take over as a terrorist organization. They were elected. So this is the 26th of January back in 2006. Figures from Palestinian officials tonight confirmed Hamas shock win in the Palestinian preliminary election over the once dominant Fatah party. Polls had predicted a coalition between two parties as the most likely outcome of the vote, but a surprise surge in support for the Islamists took a party that calls for the destruction. Okay, this is what I want you guys to look at. So when these people are chanting about freeing Palestine, this is not what this group, they are founded on. They call for the destruction of the state of Israel. That is exactly what the principles of Hamas are. It is not free Palestine. It is not free the Palestinian people. It is quite literally, do your research, do your own research. They are founded on the principles of destroying Israel and killing Jews. That is it. That is their fundamentals. So what's another thing that I've seen that is completely disturbing, to say the least. Hi, Markella. How are you? So good to see you. That is extremely disturbing, to say the least. And I kind of, again, have to believe that, like, ignorance is bliss and they haven't done their research and don't know, and that's why they're doing this. But when I see people on American soil that are chanting, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free or will be free, that is something that's a saying or whatever that has been used. Like I said, historically, go back, do your own research. They are not talking about from the river to the sea, Palestine is going to have this land. It is from, it has been used by these terrorist organizations, because what they're saying is from the river to the sea, all the Jews must die. Quite literally, that is what they are referring to. Now, I don't think everyone that's out there chanting it knows, because I think they failed to do what I did and want to educate themselves on the matter before forming an opinion and being in support, because I have to believe that not that many people actually believe that an entire culture, an entire religion, an entire group of human beings should be completely annihilated. And if so, then I think we should all be really, really fucking disturbed by the amount of anti-Semitists that live among us here on American soil. And I don't get down with racism in any form or fashion. So I do not. I think racism is the lack of knowledge. I absolutely think it is rooted in ignorance and hate. I think it is a learned and a taught behavior. I do not think human beings are born hateful. I don't think human beings are born to hate a group of people. But I do struggle. Yeah, exactly, Renee. Like those in Senate, I do struggle to understand how we justify saying something like that. Thank you so much, Markella. I know this is not my typical coverage, but like I said, I did like 9 hours of research on this, and I've seen the videos. I've seen them from the GoPros, and it is horrific. I don't have the words for what this is. Typical casualties of war, when someone's leg is blown off, and that would be something horrific to see. But what was done to these people is horrific. What you see in those images and those videos, it is ungodly. If you go to the CBN News website and look for the most recent video, an interview with a former Hezbollah fighter who converted to Christianity, what they are taught about Jews will blow your mind. Well, I do have a brief video, Greg, and we can look at that as well. if you wanted to, I'd really, really, really appreciate if you would, even if you can shoot me a link just in text, I could pull it up on my email. I can email it to myself. So, because I do have like a video of children from various areas talking about the way that, they're taught. And it's really, really sad because I think, that put it together for me as to why one of the terms that Israel was asking for in the other agreements had to do with um, not indoctrinating the children. Um, and it's just really sad, to say the least, because to teach your children hate is so incredibly disgusting to me. And I mean that full scale. I don't mean that just applying to Palestinian people or anyone else. Hi, Far, how are you? Or anyone else. I mean it on all spectrums. So anyway, what we see here. So I was under the impression, I just kind of assumed, to be honest, that they had overthrown the area. But no. Polls, there was a surprise surge in support for the Islamists. Um, uh, and they decided on a party that calls for the destruction of the state of Israel. The preliminary count put Hamas on 76 seats versus the other at 43 in the 132 seat chamber. The results could complicate hopes of a peace deal. So again, one of our presidents were overseeing or hoping to oversee a peace deal between the two. And George Bush said that the United States would not deal with a Hamas-led government unless the party recognized Israel's right to exist. This is the shit I'm talking about. Acknowledgement that a people has a right to exist, to be alive. Like that's why I have to believe that people that are just gung-ho, full support of this, don't know what they're saying. I have to believe that. Because when have you ever seen the United States go like knock on another territory's door and say like, hey, can you guys like stop bombing us and just acknowledge that like we are human beings that have a right to breathe air and be alive? So as the scale of the Fatah defeat became apparent, its officials conceded defeat, and the Palestinian Prime Minister, and I'm not even going to attempt his name because I don't want to be disrespectful, and his cabinet submitted their resignations. This is the choice of the people. It should be respected, is what he told reporters. So the exit of his cabinet will change the wider politics of the region. Fatah, the party, and again, guys, I'm not even attempting these names, and president support. So, and this is where it gets frustrating, where it got frustrating for me, because where I assumed like the other situations, they had been overthrown by a terrorist organization. This particular opposing party did support a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, while the founding charter, please, 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 if you don't take anything else from this, please take this. The founding charter of Hamas commits it to the destruction of the Jewish state. So let me be extremely clear. Hamas, their goal, their founding principles, their founding charter, it states it does not state we're here to free Palestinian people. It states we are here to destroy Israel and kill Jews. So the Islamist faction, which is designated as a terrorist group by the US and EU, has not launched a unaliving attack since February of last year. Wow. But has also refused to renounce violence against Israel. Look, has also refused to renounce violence against Israel. So the person who won a seat for Hamas in the northern Gaza Strip insisted peace talks or recognition of Israel were not on its agenda. Okay. And that is why all of the sources that I looked for, guys, I went back. I did not want any sources that were from like October of this year. I wanted it to be, because I feel like right now where a lot of people are, it's a lot of division over this. And I wanted these sources to be from further back. Okay. So this was when they were elected in 2006. Let me repeat. Someone who would sit in a seat or win a seat that is an official of Hamas, I guess you could say, in the northern Gaza Strip insisted peace talks or recognition of Israel were not on its agenda. Hundreds of Israeli civilians have died in nearly 60 Hamas unaliving bombings. That was 2006. Tonight, the Hamas leader said he had called Mr. Abbas to request a meeting so that they can decide on the future of the Palestinian government. We want to meet with him and consult about the shape of the political partnership that we can achieve. He told reporters that he received well-wishers in the garden of his Gaza home. Hamas will cooperate with everybody for the benefit of all the people. But the poll could leave the Palestinian government without international recognition. And in Israel, so they knew this was a risk. And in Israel, where general election is due to take place in March, it will be a key influence on reshaping the political terrain following Ariel Sharon's stroke. Mr. Bush, which obviously would have been representing the U.S., said a party that advocated the destruction of Israel would never be a partner for peace, but also held the result as an example of democracy in action. If there are people unhappy with the status quo, they'll let you know. What was positive is that it is a wake-up call to the leadership, he told a White House press conference. People are demanding honest government. People want services. They want to raise their children in a decent environment. Mr. Bush, said Condoleezza Rice, the U.S. Secretary of State, was holding talks with the 3 other members of the International Coalition, backing the Roadmap Peace Plan, which was, I guess, under the EU, UN, and Russia to work out a response to the Hamas win. So the acting Israeli prime minister at this time said Israel could not trust a Palestinian leadership in which Hamas had a role. I think that is absolutely valid. I think we would be idiots if we trusted an organization that was founded on the principles of our destruction. Israel can't accept a situation in which Hamas, in its present form, these people are really generous, in my opinion. In its present form, has as a terror group calling for the destruction of Israel will be part of the Palestinian Authority without disarming. I won't hold negotiations with a government. And this was, he was speaking to U.S. Senator Joseph Biden, who we now know is our president. According to his office, he said, I will not hold negotiations with a government that does not stick to its most basic obligation of fighting terror. Deep implications could be felt in Palestinian territories themselves. As the single best aid donor to the Palestinian Authority, the EU's reaction to the result will determine whether the $500 million from its 25 member states and common budget will continue to be sent. Israel's acting foreign minister, I'm not attempting these names, guys, because I do not want to be disrespectful and slaughter them, asked the EU to sound a clear voice explaining there will be no European understanding for a process in which a terror government is being set up. So when you hear, and I'm not saying that it makes it right, or it means that it doesn't matter that children are possibly suffering or going without. But when you hear that, they don't have the resources they need there in the Gaza Strip. They don't. They need more. They need this. They need just even basic resources. Let me be extremely clear. They knew, but prior to electing them, and I'm not saying it softens the blow, but what I am saying is we are finding out, in my opinion, here in America, that our vote matters. And I have voted Democrat and I've voted Republican. So don't come at me with the bullshit of, oh, you're talking bad about Democrats or something like that. Absolutely not. I've voted Democrat in the past. There are certain ideals that are Democratic that I agree with. And there are Republican ideals that I agree with. So honestly, I've never voted straight ticket ever in my life. But what I will say is I feel like in a lot of the speeches and press conferences and things that our president is senile. A lot of times I think it's sad, honestly. I really, really do. Like it's not even a hatred or, that I completely cannot stand him or something. It is, I do not think he is fit to be running a country. And I think it's really easy for other countries to see that because he's on press conferences talking about eating chocolate ice cream and stuff. And he doesn't seem to know where he's at a lot of the time. And I think that's scary because this is also the guy that's in charge of, I don't know, our nuclear weapons and stuff. So we don't, I just think I find it very scary. And I do think that we are finding out here in the U.S. that our vote has repercussions. And every move we make, essentially, in regards to politics, can have repercussions. And these people knew that as well. They knew that they were regarded as a terrorist organization. They knew their fundamentals. And you would have to believe that they knew, especially considering that the EU was seemingly a really big donor. I would say 500 million that they were allotting out of their budget and sending, it looks like, regularly. the EU having established Hamas as a terrorist organization, being such a huge donor, you would have to assume that they knew those resources would no longer be there. And I mean, this is what happens. But I was really, really surprised to see that they elected them. And I just wanted to reference this because at this point in our timeline, we are within the 2005, 2006 era. So the EU foreign policy chief, he went on to say that the election result had created an entirely new situation, which he was saying he felt needed to be analyzed. So yeah, that I was really, really surprised to see that and we see here kids wearing the Hamas support hats. I do not even like seeing, you know, kids wearing shirts that I don't like seeing little kids in Trump hats or shirts that say like F Joe Biden. Because I don't believe in forcing, you know, your beliefs on your kids. That's me personally. That's my own opinion. You know, I'll make sure that I educate my children, but I will never push them in either direction when it comes to things like that. So I think it speaks volumes when we've seen the reference of indoctrinating children there, and we see them with the hats and head bands in support of Hamas. So Hamas won the election via the Palestinian people. Hamas begins governing the people of the Gaza Strip in 2006. In 2008, Israel's leaders offered the previous deal, so with the everything standing, the territories, everything like that, from the Camp David summit, and even offered more territory again and land swap. Hamas refused with no counteroffer or suggestions. And the prime minister, I thought it was important to note when I was going through it that the prime minister of Israel had also included non-sovereign trusteeship over sacred lands. A couple of different ones, but one that I noted was the old city of Jerusalem, because we do know that that, you know, that holds that's a relevant area to the Jewish people, right? So just kind of before we close this out, and we are about to, because I wanted it to be an hour long, and here we are at 2 hours. I just want to point out some like statistics, okay? So there are currently 20% of all citizens in Israel are Arab. The majority of Palestinians in the West Bank live under Palestinian rule. It is not Israel's governing that is making the conditions or lack of what they are. Not when you're being governed by another entity, right? All of the Arabs in the Gaza Strip live under Hamas rule. All of them are governed by Hamas. So when you do see a lack of resources or you're being told children are starving, I do urge you to at least open your mind and consider why and how they are able to afford the type of military equipment, ammunition, um, and basically any and all military resources that they're able to afford, but yet their civilians are lacking basic resources. And I also have to ask, when we look at inflation or something that goes wrong in our society as Americans, do we look to our governing people or do we blame Canada? Right? So, another thing I wanted to point out before we close it out is that when they went, because I'm seeing signs, talking about how, like, pretty much the Jewish are anti Arab or anti Palestinian. And we've seen the history now. So whether you're when you have two opposing sides that have been opposing for 100 years, more hundreds of years rather, I think it's safe to say that you would be distrusting of that other party. Well, no. Um, Arabs have been in government in Israel, and present day, right now, and I hope I don't slaughter his name. If so, I do not mean disrespect, but Khaled Kebab is an Arabic Muslim and is a current Supreme Court justice in Israel right now. Um, so let me just state that very, very clearly. Gaza has been under a blockade for 17 years. So I'm going to state that. And I do feel like some of these things are falsehoods that have been stated. Not everything, but a lot of them. But regardless, I don't think it justifies the torture of civilians or the targeting of civilians. Um, then we have the Palestinian Authority. I do want to point out, go do your own research. But it does appear to me that Palestinian Authority are quite literally giving bounties to the families of terrorists, or those key terrorist members. Also, about 62%. So when they're talking about, they're wiping out an entire, group of people. About 62% of Palestinian refugees live outside of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Also, Israel took in over 800,000 Jews that were expelled from Arab land. And that was just between 1948 and 1951. And another thing, let me point out that the citizens of Israel, if they are Arab or Arab, they have the same rights. And again, I urge you do your own research because this is something I've seen said widely. They have the same exact rights as Jewish citizens if they are citizens of Israel. So, I have a few others, but those are just really the ones that I think were worth noting. And I just wanted to, because I wanted to do research before I formed an opinion. I was not educated at all. I mean, I knew it was a thing, but I had never really thought or had a reason to be motivated to go and look at this. And I have to assume that probably a lot of you guys are like me, unless you're just a history enthusiast. You probably roughly were the same way. But, I don't know. Take it and go do your own research. But I will say that this was 100%, um, it was mass murder. And I do think that to an extent, like that falls under true crime. And I think that really any and all civilians need to, whether it's thoughts, prayers, and I don't mean just Israel. I mean the ones that are um, the ones that are in the Gaza Strip, pray for them as well. Do I think you should be? I mean, it's your business what you pray or where you send vibes and what those are and your thoughts. But I think that I personally will not be saying any prayers for the terrorists that committed the atrocities that I witnessed with my own two eyes via those GoPro cameras. But I I will still be praying for every innocent child that is in that area that unfortunately will be or is they could possibly be a a casualty to war, but I cannot make it clear enough that there is a really, really big difference between a casualty to war and the direct torture and targeting of civilians. And that's what I ask people to entertain. Hi, YOLO. Welcome in. And I pray for those indoctrinated into, I pray for the innocent, I pray for the world. Absolutely far. And I'm not telling you guys what to believe or to take a side. Let me be clear in that, okay? What I'm telling you is do your own research and don't, possibly consider doing like I did. Don't go for resources or sources that were written in October of this year. Go find articles from 2006. Go find articles from years and years ago, historical documents and things like that. Go look at it for yourself and then outsource. Check it upon various sources. Don't just take it from one source. Take it, check it on different sources. Obviously, find, ones that are reliable. But that's just really what I wanted to point out because I do believe that that we don't necessarily have to pick a side, but what we do have to do is call a spade and acknowledge that when you do see people right now that are parading and celebrating what Hamas did, I do want them to know that what they're celebrating is sexual assault. What they're celebrating is murder, what mass murder at that. What they're celebrating is torture. What they're celebrating is removing the heads from babies. What they are celebrating is killing elderly in their kitchens. What they're celebrating is people who civilians, not military, people who were in their homes and refused to come out of their homes being burned alive, people that were fleeing the areas in cars being burned alive. And I don't give a shit if it was our very own military doing it. I would never support our military specifically targeting and attacking civilians purposely. Again, there in all wars, there's going to be casualties, and I don't, that's one of the things I hate about war, is that it does not matter. Innocent people die for decisions that their leaders make. That's why I do think it's scary. Again, I cannot stress enough. I have no reason to be biased about this. I am not Jewish. I I'm not Palestinian. Um, I've never even visited Israel. I don't vote either way, one party. Um, I vote based off the candidates. Um, like I said, I voted Republican. I voted Democrat. I don't vote straight ticket. I'm not telling you where to place your allegiance as far as politics go, because I don't do that here. I don't do it in general. But what I am saying is, it's really fucking disturbing when we have people that are celebrating these types of crimes, because this isn't just war, the result of war. This is torture. It's terrorism. YOLO. Oh, thank you so much, YOLO. I know this is touchy, right? So, and really, we don't do politics over here tonight. I'm really kind of breaking my own policy, but this is mass murder. So, um, mhm. Oh yeah, absolutely, they are terrorists. I mean, we just read it, and I mean, again, I encourage you guys to go read into them. You guys look at their founding principles. Their founding principles have nothing to do, they say nothing about freeing Palestinians. They say their goals are to kill Jews and destroy Israel. That, quite literally, that is their foundation. Wishful thinking. Leaders of countries that want to go to war should just get in a boxing ring with exactly with their other leaders. YOLO, I completely agree. And that's when I see wars that are unnecessary. And here's the thing: what we're learning, what's going on, and I find that infuriating. Also, is that what we're learning is that there is a tunnel system underneath Gaza. So Hamas, and I would likely, assuming that, all of the hostages that they haven't publicly announced they've killed, that, assuming they're alive, Hamas is in those tunnel systems. They've stated that. I do believe they've stated that, like, they've taken refuge in the tunnel systems underneath hospitals and things like that. And, so when people, another thing that I learned in my research. So Israel has an extremely intelligent resources when it comes to their military. They are very precise. So when Gaza or Hamas have done these in the past, even these rocket attacks, they launch rockets on, I have to believe, their intended target being Israel. They have quite literally killed their own people, because I guess their system is not as sophisticated or intelligent. So when people sit here and act like, oh, well, Israel defending themselves and standing their ground and doing what they are choosing to do, even though they are giving their people time to evacuate. And maybe it's not a ton of time. It is hard to evacuate masses of people in 24 hours, but I've never seen that done. I've never seen, when we're going to launch an attack on someone, I've never seen us be like, oh yeah, get your civilians out of there in the next 24 hours, or we're coming in and we're coming in hot. No, we're like, fuck around and find out. And, and I don't think I don't know, I could be wrong. Again, I haven't served in our military, but I do not think we have taken the same measures to, and I mean, they're doing this from my understanding with like every target they hit. They're saying like 4 hours for this area. Please evacuate civilians from this area. Um, I I don't, to my knowledge, we as a country who I do believe we at least say that we try to avoid civilian casualties. I don't think I've ever seen us do that. If we have, I've never heard of it. So I've also never seen militants come in and target specifically civilians to torture. Um, and another thing I want to point out is I believe 30, but I know it was confirmed from what I looked at, 27 Americans have died now. And there are American hostages there as well. Maybe they're not wanting cyber war put to him. Possibly. I think it's gross and it speaks volumes that this the leaders that they did elect for their governing, which was Hamas. We just saw that 2006 election. And I'm not saying they don't want different leaders now, but what I'm telling you is they were elected in. That was something I was surprised to learn. So, but the people elected them. And guess who is not getting access to those tunnel systems to be able to take refuge? The people that supported and elected them. It's proven, they're reporting it, but they are quite literally using them as human shields. And I think they're doing that because they do know that Israel's proven by releasing tons of their hostages for just single number digits of civilians, Israel civilians that Hamas had taken hostage. They've proven that they hold a very high value on human life. Oh, that's their reason. Yeah. YOLO, I believe that absolutely could be it, but I think it really is also that they do hold value to civilian life. Because, like I said, their hostage negotiations in the past have proven that that Israel really, really values a small number of humans, and they're willing to like put their money where their mouth is and take a huge L in regards to negotiation if it means, saving their people in single number digits. So, again, do your own research, guys, but also don't blindly listen to and follow what you're being told or what you're seeing in these parades and I guess protests, whatever you want to refer to them as. So anyway, what I'm going to do now, because I do want this to be accessible for, people to just go back and listen to, and I already talk slow and this subject is especially because I've watched so many videos and seen this stuff on those GoPros. This is a hard topic for me. But I want it to be where people can, even if they got to put it on 1.5, go back and listen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this one out and I'm going to open just a live stream and you guys can come over and we can chit chat. I do have kind of a few articles that I wanted us to look at, not in regards to this, but in regards to true crime. And if you can't make it over to that live, that's perfectly fine. I understand it's late or early technically here in my area as well. But I will hopefully see you guys soon, even if it can't be there. And I'm sending you all love and light. And I'm praying for all of those that have lost people that they love on both sides of this thing. And I'm hoping that you guys will send love and healing vibes and prayer, whatever it is that you do. And I'll see you soon.